Okay, it is time for the moment of truth here. We are going to build out this full animation so that when we click on any one of the form inputs, the placeholder is going to go away and then our little label is going to slide down. So our current state right now is it works as far as the animation on the box shadow, but we are currently showing the label. We want to hide that by default, and then we want to show it and reveal it, make it look like it's sliding down whenever the user clicks on the input or the text area. So let's start building this out. It actually isn't going to take a lot of code, but it is going to cover a few topics we have not covered up to this point. So we're going to take it nice and slow. Let's come down here and let's first update the visibility and opacity values here. So here we're going to start off, we want the visibility to start off as hidden. And then we want the opacity to start at 0. So what that's going to do is it's just going to make it look like it's invisible. So it's going to hide it. And as you can see, if you hit refresh, the labels are now hidden. So now that we have that, let's take care of the form input first. So we're going to say form, and this is the class of form. So we'll say form input focus. And as you know, we already have something that covers focus, but what we're going to do now is we're going to grab the label, and I'm going to show you another selector that we haven't used before, which is the plus sign. This is going to be this is going to go and grab the very first value of label, and then from here it is going to go and apply whatever type of behavior we want. So it's going to apply these styles. So what I want to do is add the opacity, and we're going to change that to 1. So in other words, it's going to go from invisible to visible on the opacity side. And then, just as a reminder, opacity is for transparency. And then from there, I'm going to update the visibility. Right now it's hidden, and we're going to update it to be visible. And let's just see if that works before we even add the rest of the animation. Let's hit refresh. And now if I click on your name, you can see that that pops up. So that is working nicely. Now it's harder to see right here because of Google trying to help us out with some autocomplete, but we can tell that it's working here, so it's working on both. So this is good. Now let's build in that animation. So in order to do that, we are going to use a tool that is called transform. And we've worked with transform before, but in a different way, because here we are looking to transform and translate a value as opposed to just using transform to perform a skew. So here I'm going to say transform, and I want to translate via the y-axis, and I want to take it 1 rem. So what that means is essentially it's going to take the entire value, the entire label, and it is going to move it down the y-axis, which means it's just going to slide it down 1 full value. So if it is 5 pixels or 10 pixels high, it's going to start at the very top of where it would be, and it's going to slide it down by 1 rem or 1 value. So it's just going to essentially take it exactly to where it's at right now, but it's going to move it all the way up to the top. So what it's going to mimic is that the placeholder is actually sliding down, changing colors, and is moving. That is all that we're doing. So let's hit refresh. And now if you click here, you can see that that is working perfectly. This is exactly what we wanted to do. So this is pretty neat. I'm really liking this. And we works on the email. So that is awesome. So hopefully that wasn't too challenging. So what I want to do now is we also want to apply this to the text area. So we can just add a comma here. So we'll say form, and then we want to select the text area, and the same rules apply. So we want to grab the focus and then the first element, which is the label, just like this. Hit save, refresh, and now see if this works. So I click on it and that looks like it's working. We need some space here, but the animation itself is working perfectly. Now the other thing, let's see if I just want to test it out. So if I type in your name, that's looking good. Your email, that all looks really nice. And then for the message, some message, that is all perfect. I do not see any changes that need to be made on this whatsoever. So congratulations if you went through that. You were able to leverage the tools of Transform and Translate in order to create a really dynamic form experience where it feels like the user is interacting directly with the form and it's changing based on their behavior. So great job. In the next guide, we're going to finish up a few polish items and you are going to be completely done with this entire project. Very nice work. In this video, we are going to finalize the styles on the contact page, and I'm seeing 3 items that I'd like to clean up. So the first one is that if you notice, whenever you click on one of these elements, do you notice how we have duplicate labels? We have the placeholder here, and then we have the label moving down. And I'm not really a fan of that. I'd rather have the entire placeholder disappear whenever this focus event occurs. So that's one item. Then I also want to move the send button in the center and move it down a little bit. And then each one of these icons should be our gold color. So let's address each one of those items and we'll be done with the desktop version of the application. So right here, I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom. And let me take a quick notice, make sure that I'm not duplicating any selectors. So here, this is what we're wanting to update, this form input, WebKit input placeholder, but we want to capture the focus area. So let's just copy this. And now we're going to say input, but then we're also going to just capture it when the actual focus event is occurring. So the way that you can do that is you can actually chain on your selectors just like this. So I can say input : focus and then text area : focus as well. And then what I want to do is I can just make this essentially disappear by making the color transparent. So I'm going to make the placeholder color transparent. And now if I come and refresh, if you click on the name, you can see that that disappears and that's working. Same thing with email, same thing with message. So this is working very nicely, and all we had to do was to update the pseudo selector so that the placeholder was now listening for that focus event and changing the color. So that looks really nice. And moving down, let's also now update this send button so it gets moved down here. So we want to add our spacer, which remember in our helper file we created a spacer, so we can do that. And then I also want to center it, and we'll use Flexbox for that. So coming to our buttons, we could either put this in button or in our helper, but I think it makes sense to put it in buttons because this is going to be related purely to how buttons behave. So let's go and find this class name. If I scroll down here, or too much, so it's centered button wrapper. That is the name of the class. So we want to say center button wrapper, and this is going to be just a basic flex container. So we've created a lot of those throughout this course. So we're going to say display flex, and then from there we'll just say justify content center. Hit save, come back, hit refresh. Oh, and it looks like we have a little issue. Let's see what's going on. Before I check anything, let's see, center button wrapper. Let me just double check my spelling. Center button wrapper. Oh, centered. There we go. I kind of like center button wrapper. That could be the issue. And there we go. That's working. So that is looking nice. We still also, I forgot one other thing. We have to add the cool little box shadow whenever we press on this. So we'll do that. And we also need to move it down just a little bit. So let's just add a really small spacer. If you open up your helper, you can see we have a spacer of 60. Let's just add a even smaller one. We'll add a spacer here. We'll just call it spacer maybe 10. That should give us what we need. And for this, it's just going to have a height of 10 pixels. And now we can call that directly in the view. So here, and then we'll just say spacer 10. Hit save. Refresh, and that just gave a little bit more space. I like having just a little bit more room there. So before we finish out this box shadow, let's also take care of these icons. So if you come back here, we'll find out where we need to select. So that's going to be in the contact CSS file, and it's in the company details wrapper, and then we can just select the icon. So that should be relatively straightforward. So we have the company details wrapper just like this. I'm going to copy that, and then we can just grab that I tag. So I'll grab the I and then say our color is going to be the CE, and I'm actually, as I'm typing it out, I'm going blank on the name. I think it was CEA135. Yes, CEA135. I'm just making sure. CEA135. Hit save. And now if you hit refresh, those icons are properly set up. So all of that is looking really good. And so the very final piece to what we need to implement is going to be this button right here. Notice if I click on it, nothing really happens. And I'd like to update the status of it and add that box shadow whenever that happens. So the way we can do that is, let's go into the button class here, and right under button, I'm going to use a button pseudo selector called active. And so what this means is that a user has clicked on the button, or if they're on a phone or something, they've pressed on the button. So here we just want to add a box shadow, and let's add 5 pixels, 5 pixels, 30 pixels, and then RGBA. And we're going to go with our same 0, 0, 0, and for our transparency, we'll say 0.4. Hit save now, and if you hit refresh, let's see if this works. When you click on the button, that is gorgeous. I love that. So when you click here, you can see that it almost looks like we are having a true feeling of pressing on the button because it adds that depth. So I really like that. So we have completed the entire desktop version of this entire site. Fantastic job in going through all of this. So we have the about page, the home page, the menu. We've seen how to use all kinds of tools, and then we finished it up with the form. So the last thing that we need to implement in the next section is going to be how we can make this entire website responsive. So what that means is that we're going to be able to make it so that if someone accesses this site on a phone or a tablet, it's going to automatically respond and readjust the content. And so we're going to learn about tools like media queries, and we're going to be able to update column orders and all kinds of cool steps that you can take. And now in the modern time, if you're building a website, you really have to make it responsive, because there are many times where you're actually going to be getting even more traffic from a smartphone than you might be getting from the web. A restaurant website's a great example of this, because if the website gets most of its clicks off of a site like Yelp, most of those users are on their phones. And so making sure that this works in a responsive manner is definitely going to be a critical skill to have. So I will see you in the next and final section.